hear it from you.
Oops, didn't mean to jump ahead like that. Go.
Hi, Jeffrey.
Hey.
Yeah. So meanwhile, people are coming. May I know a little bit more about you, your profession?
Sure, absolutely. So I am a career marketer, but what I market is what a lot of you are engaged in building, which is mostly business to business software. And so I started my career at a company called Business Objects that was later sold to SAP. And that's where I learned the beginnings of the work I do today in the message matrix from Dave Kellogg, whose blog I recommend to anybody who's in a SaaS business. And I progressed from there. I took a little time out to become a songwriter. And then I went to Oracle, where I established a thing called the Oracle Messaging Team. And after about 5 jobs there, left the company for a while and then returned as a vice president at Oracle in both product marketing and product management. And then became a CMO of a couple of technology companies. But what I've been known for throughout this time is work on messaging and positioning, helping sometimes very technical businesses get their message very short, very sharp, very clear, not getting too jargony or overwhelming your customer with details, so that you can actually sell your product and grow your business. And so that's the kind of consulting work that I do today, and those are the topics I speak on. And today's topic, I usually talk about message makeover and the message matrix in general and how to do that in your business. And there is a session, a recorded session on multi-cloud for you that you can see on that topic. Today, we're going to drill down on one really important and often screwed up element of it, which is differentiation. How you set yourself apart from competition in the right way instead of the wrong way. So basically, I'm coming out of 20 years of marketing the kind of technology that multi-cloud for you participants are usually involved in building. And so if you intend to especially to build toward a more general business career, or are engaged in or will be engaged in a startup business of your technology, that's one of the places where this session becomes useful.
Yeah, that's
And
quite
somebody just sent a link to my profile. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's very interesting, and I'm sure we are going to have a very interesting session with having so much of experience. You are carrying a 20 years of experience. Definitely,
Well,
let's
hope so. It may just mean I'm old, but it'll definitely be a different kind of session than probably is usual in the community.
Yeah, sure.
So let's see where we are on time. At 32. Okay. Shall we give a couple more minutes for people to come in, or shall we go ahead and get started?
Yeah, so I can see we are already live on this stream, and now because we have a private dashboard, so many people would be joining directly on their dashboard, because this session is also being streamed on every individual dashboard, which the link has been already, like they would have got one mail. So people are scattered. So few are on WebEx, few are on the YouTube, few are on Facebook, few are on the their direct private dashboard. They are
okay.
Yeah.
So should we give a couple more minutes, or shall we go ahead and kick it off?
Ideally, we start at 9:05. We give another 1-2 minutes for chit chat, socializing.
Sounds good.
So yeah, so that was a great interaction with, I believe, Lubna, right? So
yeah, Lubna. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of.
And any other questions or things that you're kind of hoping that we'll cover today, or they can even be ideas for sessions we might have in the future. Yes.
Anshu, this side. I don't have any questions, but I would like to compliment because your session, I just came in one session before this, but the session that you give, the first thing is that it's very productive, because most of the sessions when you go, you think that it's gonna teach you a lot, but you end up getting half of the knowledge. But when I come in your session, I feel that this time was productive. I learned something.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And we'll try to make this one both, pretty compact and pretty useful as well. And if you have questions afterwards, we'll have certainly time for Q&A today, because this is a shorter session than the one you previously took. And beyond that, again, please feel free to email me or contact me on LinkedIn or connect me on LinkedIn if you'd like to ask any questions that come to mind afterwards. But thank you very much, Anshu, for the compliment.
Ashish also is pinging a nice question. Sir, any pointer to manage risk of being so different that acceptance become issue?
So to make sure I understood the question, it was a question like, is there a risk of being so different that people kind of don't understand you?
Yeah. That's the biggest problem with the case.
Yes, and in fact, it is essentially the topic of this session. Differentiating differently largely means not doing it too soon, not doing it at the wrong time. So your question, basically this entire session is focused on answering your question. So fasten your seatbelts. You're asking the right thing.
Super. So I think we can start now. I am already started recording, so that this is available on your private dashboard later. With obviously there's a certificate and there are a lot of other things. There's a document also that Jeffrey has provided. So yeah.
May I come in, Anjani sir? You got introduced to Lumna?
Yeah.
Not
much.
We have already interacted.
Oh, great! I joined
not an introduction as such, but we've definitely talked.
She heads a large real estate group for marketing in India.
Oh, fantastic!
Based out of New Delhi.
Okay, great. Well, that's actually the part of India that I know the most. I don't want to say I know it well, but I had a team in Gurgaon. Out of Oracle, and I've been back and forth a few times to see old friends and to do a bit of consulting and advising in the New Delhi area. So great to meet you.
Great. Okay. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Shall we now?
And introducing Anshu. So Anshu is getting to be developed as a youngest CEO. She's now 13 when she was talking, and she started doing a lot of different things at the age of 8 or 9. So now this almost 3-4 years she studies and she do a lot of other things. Her aim is to join Harvard as young as possible, and so she's trying a lot of multiple things to do that.
Fantastic. And I think Anshu and I might have met in my prior session.
Yeah, so she has a website also, www.blockchainkids.net, and she is interacting with a lot of kids globally to build a blockchain to stop child trafficking. She's doing a lot of other things. So
wonderful.
Obviously, so she really got impressed in her first session, and she said, "I'm going to join this also."
Well, thank you. I think we exchanged a message or an email after my last session as well. So it's great to connect with you again. I think we're in good shape to go ahead and kick it off then. Shall we go ahead?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, terrific. Well, for those that I didn't meet in my prior message makeover session, I'm Jeffrey Pease from Message Mechanics, which is my consultancy helping businesses sharpen their message and their brand in order to grow their business. And that matters to all of you, no matter how technical your current work is, because you also need to sell it, right? Whether you're employees or whether you're aspiring startup entrepreneurs, especially if you're aspiring startup entrepreneurs, you have to be able to convey your value to your customers. And out of all of the work that I do helping companies do that using a process that I call the message matrix, no area is more important or as often screwed up as differentiation. And so the reason I'm calling this session Differentiate Differently is because the way that most technical companies especially differentiate their products is very often wrong. And the key to doing differentiation correctly is to compete with your real competition. And that means understanding what your real competition is. So let's dig into that a little bit. So, in any messaging work, part of the problem we're trying to solve is saying too much, going blah, 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 and just boring, overwhelming, or worse still, confusing your potential customers. And so I always advocate a structure that I use called the message matrix as a disciplined way of taking the hundreds of points of value that you offer and boiling them down to a very short set of simple messages that sell. And as I mentioned in my previous session, if you take that pyramid of message and turn it on its side, it looks like a spear point or an arrowhead, trying to get into that very narrow aperture of attention that people have for you. That first 10 seconds of attention that'll get you, the 30 seconds that'll get you the conversation, the demo, the engagement, ultimately the sale. All very well. It's always important to boil it down. But now let's focus on one specific area, because even though the structure of a message matrix is simple, consistent, and basically always the same, which is that it always contains a one-sentence positioning statement. That's the tightest expression of your value. It always contains 3 key messages, never 4, never 5, and it always contains 9 proof points, 3 for each key message. What actually goes into those blank boxes is immensely different according to your differentiation situation. So let me explain what I mean by that. So the positioning statement is, as I said, your story in one existential sentence. And if you need a review on this, you can go back to the recording of the message makeover session. But you're going to say the name of your offering, which can be the name of your company if you're a new one-product company, or it can be the name of your product if you're a larger organization. You're going to say what category it belongs to, like, for example, procurement software. And that's not really to be fancy. That's not necessarily to be differentiated. You don't necessarily want to be a category of one. But people have to know that you're the kind of thing that they're shopping for. And then you're going to give a benefit or a differentiator. The one big power piece that you're going to hang your whole hat on. For example, dramatically cut all of your supply management costs, or get your whites whiter and your brights brighter, whatever it is. So how do you decide, though, whether what goes in the back half of that sentence, whether the payload on your missile, the head on your arrow, is a benefit or a differentiator? Because here's the funny thing about being differentiated. Different isn't always better. And I'm going to say that again because it is a central point of today. Different isn't always better. So let me give you an example. So we are going to use, this is the central construct of this session. We're going to use this differentiation framework to understand whether or not you should be focusing on direct differentiation against a competitor or competitors in your marketing message. What does that depend on? It depends on whether people already understand the kind of thing you're selling, which we call the category, and already knows that you sell it. So, for example, do people already know what a car is? And then do they understand that, whatever you're selling, a Hyundai, a Tesla, a Tata, is a kind of car? If they understand those things, you can focus on differentiation. But don't assume that they already understand those things. So let me give you an example. Actually, let's make this very alive. Let's make it a role play. Can we, if Lubna, will you do a quick role play with me? If we can unmute Lubna? I know I sort of volunteered you for this job. Okay, so Lubna, for the next 2 minutes, you're a farmer in Iowa. Okay? Just go with me on this.
Okay. Okay.
You don't have to know anything about farming or Iowa. But we're going back in time, not just in space. You're a farmer in Iowa, and it's 120 years ago. And I'm Henry Ford. I'm about to show you the first car you have ever seen and try to sell it to you. And so I'm going to give you my pitch and you respond. So, Lubna, you should buy my Ford automobile because it has the most efficient carburetor of any automobile on the market. Way better than a Chevrolet. What's your response to that?
I'm a farmer, and the 120 years back, of course, first of all, I won't need it. Why would I buy it? I don't need a car.
Right. So your response will be something like, what's a carburetor? What's a car? Get out of my horse barn. Right? So I've mismatched to you. This is premature differentiation because take seriously what Lubna just said. I don't need a car, or at least I don't know I need a car. And I certainly don't care about the distinction between a Ford car and a Chevrolet car, because I don't think I need a car at all. So what's my job here? Is my job to convince you that you need, Lubna, that you need a Ford instead of a Chevrolet? Or is my job to convince you that you need a car?
So on the step one is to create a need. You need to explain me how this product is for me. And then choosing the brand and the other features is always a stage 2 and a stage 3 consideration. The first stage is always to create a need. That's
exactly right. And in fact, you can see that in this diagram, there is literally a stage 1, which is, do I need a car at all? A stage 2, what cars are available to me that I should consider? And a stage 3, why would I want this car instead of that car? And depending on where you are as a brand and where your customers' awareness of a market is, you may be able to jump in at stage 3, or that may be a terrible mistake, and you may have to go back to what I have to do with Lubna as a farmer 120 years ago, and I have to start at, say, stage 1. So let me try again. So, Lubna, I have this new thing, and it's called a horseless carriage. So it's kind of like your carriage, but you don't need a horse for it. And it gets your milk to market that much faster. And you don't have to scoop up what drops out of your horse. Do you now have a higher level of interest in the horseless carriage?
Yeah, of course, if it anyway is going to benefit my business or going to increase my productivity, so definitely it's going to interest me.
Exactly right. Okay, well, thank you for playing the role. So this is, now notice I didn't have to prompt her responses, right? I just put her in the situation and just made 2 kinds of pitches. One very wrong for the situation, which is at this time, very few people knew what a car was, and they didn't care about the difference between one and another. And the other, where I was appropriate for her situation. So what did I do when I was appropriate for her situation? I educated her not about a Ford specifically so much as about the category of car. And in fact, I even changed the category name to help her make a transition from where she was. I referred to it as a horseless carriage because that's a carriage is something that a farmer in Iowa 120 years ago would actually understand. So don't make the mistake of jumping to direct competitive differentiation when what's called for is education, because the customer can't want yours until they want one at all. Now, if we apply this to the software world, we don't have to go back 120 years ago. We only have to go back maybe 20 or 25 years ago to see how a company did this very, very well. Companies have done it well since, but Siebel, the first big CRM company before Salesforce, is a great example of this. They did their best work and they had their best growth, not by saying Siebel is awesome, but by saying this is what customer relationship management is, and this is how it's advantageous to your business. And this is why you don't want to try to track your customers in a spreadsheet if you want to have a better relationship with them. And then, by the way, this is what we do. This is what we make. So if I sell you on the idea of a car, it's just very convenient for both of us that I happen to be standing there with a Ford branded car to sell you. So don't differentiate when you should be educating. Now, you're actually always differentiating against something. When we talk about direct differentiation, phase 3, what we mean is, Mercedes versus Tesla or whatever in a well-developed market. That is differentiating against what Geoffrey Moore calls the competitive alternative, the direct competitive alternative. Now, differentiating between a car and the horse Lubna was previously using is a little different. That is differentiating against what Geoffrey Moore would call the market alternative, how things are being done today. Or you can also think of it as the situation if you're coming in with a disruptive improvement that you are trying to disrupt. But the key element here is don't differentiate when you should be educating, because they can't want yours until they want one. Now, what if we're not in phase 1? What if we're in, and outlined the phases perfectly, we're in phase 2. Phase 2 is consideration. Like, let's take, for example, Hyundai entering the US car market in the 1980s. By that time in the US, everybody knew what a car was, and if you tried to explain a horseless carriage, people would think you were an idiot. But they didn't know Hyundai. So how do you get them to consider Hyundai? Well, it's not so much an exercise in differentiation, although you might differentiate on things like a lower price. But your primary focus here is letting people know you're out there at all, that you make a car and that you are a credible vendor. So your goal here in all of your marketing actions is to gain consideration. You just want enough people to stop at the Hyundai dealership on their way to the Toyota lot. You want to get them into your sales process. And if you can get them to consider you, if you can get on the list, you can get in the RFP, then you will start to win some business. And as you become a better known vendor, you may get to move then from consideration to the next phase. So in consideration, as in education, you are going to tend to focus first on the benefits of the category and then gradually move people along so that they start to see your unique advantages. All right. Now let's fast forward to the phase 3 direct competitive differentiation example. Let's say it's the present day and or I'm Mercedes in the car market. By this time, everyone knows what a car is and everyone knows, for example, Mercedes. So if I'm Mercedes, what am I doing? I'm focusing on the 2% or 5% difference, be it technology, be it image, whatever, that makes me unique. Because I can take all of the rest for granted. You know, I may have spent 100 years building the market awareness and the brand that allows me to do that. But at this point, you know, if everybody knows you and everybody knows what the thing you sell is, you gain the privilege of just going straight for the jugular and talking only about what makes you different. Like some years ago, Mercedes put an advertisement in magazines that just showed a picture of a brake assembly, just this one part of the car, which is probably like 0.1% of the car. What they did was they talked about that brake assembly, the uniqueness of it, and other unique safety features that Mercedes had. Now, they could only do that because everybody already knew what a car was, and everybody already knew that Mercedes was a leader in making cars. So they could start on the right side of this continuum. So your job, the next time you're making a decision about how to communicate with your customers, is to think about this continuum, which is in the handout you can download, by the way, and to ask yourself, right now, is my customer's brain in low category awareness, like they don't know what this thing I make even is, they don't know what a car is, or is it they know that, but they don't know me, where you need to earn consideration, or do they know a lot about both, and you just need to show what's different and unique about you? The biggest mistake that companies make, and the biggest by far mistake that tech companies make, is going for differentiation when people don't yet know what the heck they're talking about, when they don't yet recognize that the category has these advantages and they don't yet know enough about the vendor to have them be credible. So don't differentiate when you should be educating. That's, if you remember nothing else, I want you to remember that. So I said that in a message matrix, the positioning statement format is normally always the same. This is the crucial one sentence that expresses your value, but the content is very different according to your phase. So here are a couple of examples to provoke your thinking about your own business. If we were in that 120 years ago selling somebody the first car they'd ever seen, this positioning statement, even though the format is the same, would look something like this. Ford is the horseless carriage, so I'm even using the category to educate, that outperforms animal-based transportation. So I'm educating. I am not contrasting myself with the competitive alternative. I'm contrasting myself with the incumbent, the market alternative, in this case, the horse. On the other hand, consideration. Let's say that I'm Oracle in 2004, because I was, entering a well-established market that had a strong incumbent. In this case, it happened to be Ariba in procurement. So I am saying Oracle Advanced Procurement is the procurement software. It's not glamorous, but you know what I'm selling. That dramatically cuts all of your supply management costs. Now, that is a big claim, but I'm not explicitly saying Ariba doesn't do it. I'm just saying loud and proud that this is what we do. I'm trying to get consideration. And then if I get you onto my car lot or into my software sales process, I can start to explain to you how we do it better. But first, I have to let you know that we do it at all, so you know to walk into my shop. And then finally, here's a pure leadership positioning statement. Roadmaster is software and services that, especially in Europe, government agencies use to know when to put salt on the road in snow. So Roadmaster is the world's leading, that's the differentiation claim, best-selling, winter road weather solution. That's the category. Now, in this case, all of the customers and most of the potential customers of Roadmaster already know what a winter road weather solution is, because these are the agencies that use this information every day. And they already know that Roadmaster is a leader. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to claim that leadership loud and strong, and we're going to defend it against all comers with our key messages and our proof points. You know, we're already at the top of the market. We want to explain to people why we have the right to that and why we command a premium price and why that's still better for them as customers. So, similar format, same structure, very, very different outcome. So when you're writing your positioning statement, make sure that you're doing it based on the phase of differentiation that you're actually in. And how do you know that? How do you know what phase of differentiation you're actually in? How do you place yourself on that arrow, that continuum that I showed you? Well, here are a couple of questions that can help you, and these are also in the handouts. When you win, when your product wins and people start using it and it gets implemented, what are you replacing? Are you replacing a competitor, a direct competitor that, that provides something somewhat similar to you? Or, if so, you're probably in differentiation phase. On the other hand, if usually when you win, what you're replacing is a homegrown solution the customer has, or otherwise an old way of doing things. In other words, you're disrupting an old status quo, which is often the case in tech, then quite possibly you are in education and you need to explain to people the benefits of your category as well as your specific offering. On the other hand, you can also map this by what happens when you lose. So when you lose, when you're in a deal and you don't get the sale, who did you lose to? Did you lose to a direct head-to-head competitor? Or did you lose to a blank stare? Like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I have no idea why I would want this car. I'm very happy with my horse. Based on those two questions alone, you can pretty much answer whether you need to be in education, consideration, or differentiation. There is a third question that can help too, and this is a useful little bit of market research to do. Figure out where the money is. Like, for example, this is anonymized, but this information is taken from one of my clients. We looked at the total market and discovered that we thought that in total potential ARR, there was about a little over 2 billion available to go get. Like, the entire market all put together, if you could get 100% of it. Now, how was this distributed? Well, the company has some direct competitors, but the company and all of its direct competitors together, what we call the innovators, collectively only sell about 50 million US in recurring revenue a year. On the other hand, the sort of outsourcers and agencies that do a much more manual, inefficient process account for about 1 billion. And then there's probably another billion of customers that are just sort of struggling along with a manual solution or a homegrown solution, what we call the Luddites. So if my client took away all of the market share of its direct competitors, it could get to maybe 50 million. But if instead it focused on educating the customers of the zombies and educating the Luddites, it could take a share of that big 2 billion. And that shows a very, very clear path. That shows that the money and therefore the marketing should be focused on education. So what does all this come down to? It comes down to the idea that you need to compete against your real competition. And if you are breaking ground in a brand new market, your real competition is probably not the one or two other small companies that are also trying to break that same ground. Even though you're trying to beat each other, to some extent, you're really more like the peloton of a bike race, where you're all pushing through the headwind and the rain together, even though you're trying to beat each other at the end of the race. So in that case, even though it's tempting to focus on those direct competitors, you should instead be focusing on your real competition, which is at that moment, not the other early cars, but the horse. At that moment, it's educating people that their old way of doing things is inefficient and they should be doing it the new way. And you just happen to be the one that's selling that new way. If, on the other hand, you're in a better developed market, everybody understands who you are and everybody understands the kind of thing you sell, then feel free to focus on the 5 or 10% that makes you unique, because that's the most important thing to get across. But don't try to beat up on the other brands of car as your primary marketing focus when your real competition is actually the horse. So compete with your real competition, whoever it actually happens to be. And if you need some help determining your point on that continuum or have other questions after this, feel free to get in touch with me using the information that you see here. So thank you for listening. And I think what I would like to do now is let the multi-cloud folks give you the certificate information and the handout download information, and then let's throw things open to a few questions and answers.
Okay, give me a moment. I'm trying to get to the code.
Sure.
Yes. So
and while that's happening, go ahead and if you have any questions, put them in the chat, or we will unmute you and you can give us the question directly.
yeah, so let me try to ping you the link, guys, and then you can do it on your own. Just give me a moment. I'm trying to get that link handy. But I think
while he's coming up with
Jeff, you can continue with the questions and answer. Encourage people
Yeah.
to ask. Yeah, because this is more interactive session, and there would be more question than what your framework is, right? So that's
I'd love to have those questions. So whether you want to put them into the chat or whether you just want to raise your hand to be unmuted, and you can go ahead and give your question live.
Hi, Jeffrey, I have a question.
Santu.
So, like if you're new in the market, you have a new idea, but you are telling people, but you're not able to get that, are they understanding or not? Are they understanding my product or not? So how to know that when do you have to educate them about your product?
Well, if the product itself is very new, as in it's kind of a new category or a disruption, I mean, when you're face-to-face, eyeball to eyeball, of course, you have a better opportunity to understand whether somebody's getting what you're talking about or not. But in more mass marketing or social media shares, you don't always have that, that immediate feedback. So in that case, what I would do is I would start by doing your own evaluation of, from my own understanding, from the responses I've received so far, do I think that I need to step back and educate people about the category? If what you have is really new, just start out by assuming that you're going to have to educate people about the category, that's going to be your focus. And then as you get feedback, that hypothesis be proved or disproved. But basically, the more new, the more disruptive, the more novel what you have is, the more likely it is that you're going to need to educate people about the category, not just explain to them why your particular one is different. So if it feels to you like what you have is a car in the world of horses, then assume education until it's proven otherwise.
And in the meanwhile, I'm trying to demo the on how to take the certificate. So
great.
I pinged you guys the speaker code. and this is the link. You just have to click this link. This link is already been shared at multiple places. It will take you directly to the form. Here you just have to do login enroll, or you can simply scroll up here. If you just want to save one step, you go to one free certificate to download. Once you are here, if you would have applied it before, your data would have been come filled up, and then you put this DDB JYP and just have to click next. It will come up filled, and then even if it's not coming up filled, there are a lot of releases because we are completely agile company building a full SaaS product. Now it's in the market, and we are trying to make it more, as Jeffrey said, more like when we are not trying to differentiate it because there are multiple things that we differentiated, and we're trying to align it with the market. So there are continuous releases happening. So you may feel some jerk, but anyway, we have this Telegram channel. You can join, connect with us. If you don't get your certificate or anything, you should get it in within 2 minutes. Once you submit, you will get the certificate in the email within 2 minutes. If you don't get within 2 minutes, means there must be some problem. And once you get the certificate, you'll also get the link of this dashboard. This is the private dashboard. You'll get the document which Jeffrey has sent attached here. So once you come back within half an hour, maybe half an hour or 1 hour, you will see that document. You can also get the document directly if you log in. If you go through the normal and formal process, you log in here, you put your data, you come inside, and once you come inside, the first time it should show up the download ebook, direct meeting link for the event. That's the Webex link. You can download the event calendar, same meeting detail, everything. So if you download the ebook, it will show up the document that Jeffrey has provided to us. It will also get attached onto your dashboard, so you can anywhere see that. This is a small short messaging framework book that Jeffrey has built for us. You can take it as a souvenir. So
terrific. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that I've answered the questions that Ashish had at the beginning of the session about how you navigate the landscape of differentiation. He says yes, so that's great. And then Jitesh, you put your question in the chat, but I wonder if you could unmute and go ahead and ask it so everybody can hear what you asked. Jitesh, are you still there?
Yeah, Jeffrey, thank you very much for that. Jeffrey, my question is that, if you are you are new in the market, and you are a software, you are just want to open a software service company, and there are thousands of companies similar to your company.
Yeah.
What will be your approach, your best approach, to enhance your skill, sales, and what do? You educate, or
Yeah, it's not going to be education if what you're doing is entering a very well-established market. It's going to be some combination of consideration and differentiation. Now, let me clarify too that your messaging, your marketing isn't the only thing involved, right? Hopefully, there's a reason why you're entering the market. Like you think you have some distinct advantage. It may be something about pricing. It may be something about specificity. It may be whatever it is. Messaging is one thing, and positioning is more than just messaging. So if you are positioning yourself, like let's say you wanted to start a food stand or a food truck, and you were going to put it on a very, very crowded street that already had a lot of food trucks, you would try to have something special about the food that you were selling, or you would try to have some reason that you were entering the market. So it's not just a messaging decision. It's also, well, why should anybody come to me if all of these things already exist? Now, if you are just saying, SaaS in general, you're entering a very crowded market. SaaS for what, right? A lot of companies have made a very good living on becoming the SaaS platform for contract management, the SaaS platform for this, the SaaS platform for that, the SaaS platform for turning old legacy apps into cloud apps really fast, is one of my current clients. So honestly, if you can't come up with anything that's special about you in entering a crowded market, you might want to think twice about entering that crowded market. If you can segment it down to this is where we play, this is how we will win, this is what's special about us, then once you've figured that out, you will be able to slot yourself into, education, or more likely consideration and differentiation, and make that distinctiveness clear. If you feel like you haven't done enough of that work yet, well, should I have this food truck, and where should I park it, and what kind of food should it sell? Then I recommend a framework and a book. It's not about messaging, it's about positioning, it's about strategy. It's about defining a battlefield where you have a chance of winning. And then take yourself through a little bit of that, of the playing to win framework. And then if you feel like you've come up with a winning position, come back to the messaging and figure out, okay, does what I'm doing require education, or in your case, does it more likely require consideration and differentiation? Now, some crowded markets have room for plenty more players, and that's absolutely fine. In blind thinking that just messaging alone can save you, because it can't. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, yes. So what I get from you is that, there should be some kind of unique thing regarding your services which you want to offer, as well as, you should have some advantage over what you are trying to build up.
Yeah, there should be a point of distinction in reality, not just in marketing description. Now, I don't want to overplay that, because sometimes very crowded markets have so much demand that there's just plenty of room for another player. Just like, say in a lot of places, the job market for, coders of certain skills is very, very good. And, if there's 1,000 of them, there's still room for 1,001. So I don't want to overplay the need to be distinct. But if you are even thinking about marketing on your distinctiveness, make sure you actually have some. Otherwise, you're going to have to just rely on there being so much demand in your particular market that there's just always room for another player.
Sure, perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Other questions? I think that's all the questions that we had in the chat, but if anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask another question, please, by all means, do.
Yeah, I would also encourage people to ask questions. Any questions, sir and ma'am?
Yeah, may I come in?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm Keshav, and actually I do not have a question, rather I have a compliment.
Thank you.
That earlier sessions I was not able to attend, and this session was really helpful. And next sessions I'll definitely have some questions prepared, because upfront I have many, and yes, I have lots many. And when we talk about the market scenario, and especially the software market scenario in India, it is even if you have a differentiator or not, the domestic market has not been tapped even beyond 20%. 80% of the domestic Indian market, the software adoption has not been tapped. And even the domestic services provider, which is vendor to international software companies, and which has homegrown software products, like even CRM, ERPs, and everything. There are so many homegrown products, which is equally competitive. In that scenario also, what you find is like even a very sound business has not gone for adoption. And if you go to them, it is really very confusing what exactly they, how do you have to pitch to them? Means first thing will be blocker, we don't want that. Second thing would be like they are very brand conscious. If Microsoft or maybe TCS or Infosys, which is a home brand, goes to them, they would buy even if the price is very premium. Like suppose,
Yes. Yes.
Suppose if there is an ERP and that ERP implementation would cost from a branded player in Indian terms 4 CR, and
Yep.
an equally good product which is coming to them for maybe 70 lakh rupees worth of implementation,
Yeah.
they would doubt a lot about that.
Yes. Yes.
So there are so many complexities. I have many questions about that.
Great.
So I would appreciate, and I would ask Anjani sir and you both, like if we could do some other series also, put this thing in a series, kind of. I would definitely would like to bring so many audience of that, because personally I am into IT sales also. Right. So I could bring many more into pre-sales who are into software pre-sales as an audience, who are directly heading many other IT enterprises for sales. So they would definitely be like to be audience of yours. Why I feel this and why I am sure about this is because I have seen the pre-sales process here. I have seen the marketing process here. They are so fragmented. They are so random. They are so not on principles. It is kind of random effort they are putting. Sometimes they would mail. Sometimes they would call. Sometimes they would go for RFP and all that. And nothing in sequence. You can expect that only from some very mature players who are like 1,000 headcounts, kind of. Below that, software companies struggle in their marketing a lot. Indian software companies, mostly at least 80% of them, who are mid-market or maybe smaller, are those who have started. Just do not know how to sell it to the domestic market or even compete into the international market. Like Africa, many Indian IT companies are trying to tap African market, but then again they are clueless there also, which is very virgin market. Which is very virgin market, kind of. Even the international players from Europe and Americas are coming to that market to tap the potential. Indians are also trying to compete there, but they just do not know the principles of the sequences and how they have to approach it from the beginning till closer. So it is mostly hit and trial, kind of. Like they would hit and trial, and mostly they lastly they resort to the price decrease.
Yes.
Lastly, they resort to price decrease.
Yeah, and I'm going to pause you there because there are there are so many actual good questions and ideas embedded in what you said. That's a rich field for future sessions. I also encourage you to I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Keshav.
So I encourage you to reach out to me on LinkedIn or to email me too. We can also talk, because I both speak to and consult with companies in the situations you're describing. You've raised topics that are beyond the scope of differentiation as a whole, and what messaging clarity can do for a business, or what happens to a business, especially in a crowded market when they don't have messaging clarity. And one of the things you talked about was how companies resort, or they drop back to price. And why are companies, why are clients willing to pay so much more, for example, for an ERP brand implementation? Because it's not so much a matter of price as it is risk management. Just like if you were on trial for murder, you'd probably pay twice as much to a lawyer that had a 5% better chance of making your innocence clear. Company clients are risk averse, and brands represent a de-risking for them. So there's so much to unpack in what you said, and we don't have time to even begin it, but I encourage you to ping me questions and ping me your contact information so we can continue the conversation. And I'd be
Definitely,
delighted to come
definitely, I
back.
would like to do that.
Yeah.
And not only the risk management part, I would put you several examples where they have implemented SAP because of that is a reputed ERP thing,
Absolutely.
and they have not utilized that.
Mhm.
Means that SAP implementation is pending there for years, and there is no adoption of that.
Oh, believe
Even
me,
the
when I was
services-
trying to sell against them at Oracle, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes. So the domestic market is like that, and domestic players do not know that. So technology marketing, kind of, there is a lot of opportunity here in India, and with Indian companies who are trying to adopt technology marketing kind of with them. They just do not know. So there is
Yeah,
lots of
yeah.
opportunity.
Great. Well, chat me up. We'll continue the conversation and also get ideas for possible future sessions to do here. Really appreciate the thoughts. So, we've just got to thank you. We've just got a couple more minutes on our time, and I want to get you guys out on time or early. Let me just ask anybody who has any additional question that they'd like to ask now. This is the last call to raise your hand.
Any questions, guys? Anyone?
Okay.
So
well, I guess I'm good. Yeah, go ahead.
So adding to Keshav, so obviously I will connect with Jeffrey and I will try to bring up more and more such sessions, short session for all the entrepreneurs, budding IT guys who are trying to move into pre-sales, marketing, management, everywhere. What Jeffrey experiences and what Jeffrey has made a framework for is going to be really helpful. I believe that the first session was so much helpful for us that we now insist on 3-layer messaging. So we do a lot. Obviously, we are not able to do everywhere.
Win.
Yeah.
Not 4.
Yes. Obviously, we are not able to do everywhere, but we do it. So, and we try to
thank you.
framework things like that. And so obviously our platform has series and everything, and the way Jeffrey said, even you are not able to find Jeffrey's detail, it's always there on the email that has been sent. So wherever you see Jeffrey's mail on your private dashboard, that will link to the Jeffrey's speaker profile, which has everything of him. So from there you can
Wonderful.
connect. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining for tonight's session. And I look forward to hearing from you one-on-one if you'd like to continue the conversation or have any other questions. And I look forward to perhaps seeing you at successive sessions. So thanks again for coming.
Yeah, and the document and everything will get uploaded within maybe 10-15 minutes, and you would be able to download it by around half an hour.
Great. And thanks to Multicloud.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
All right.
Time. Yeah, really interesting.
Okay.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.